Well, hello everybody and welcome to Lunch Break Live, real talk about obesity, food obsession, recovery, and what's really eating you. I am Cari de la Cruz, and on today's show, it's kind of like a part two from yesterday's show. Abstinence and sobriety, slavery or safety. All right, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I need to know who's with me so far, and no comments are popping up, so I'm not even really sure if I'm broadcasting. There we go. I see Cleo. Cleo, front and center. You made it. You even beat my mama in. Hi, Mama. All righty. Now, okay, so now that I know that you guys are here, and before I go delving into part two, for those of you newer viewers, or those of you who stumbled across me and said, who is that redhead? I should probably tell you that I am a 2007 gastric bypass post-op, living life in recovery from obesity and food obsession as twice the woman in half the body. I am also a recovery strategist. And when I asked you guys what that meant yesterday, I was told by Melissa that that means I am a crap cutter, because I help people figure out, how to own their crap, I guess. And according to Regina, I am also I am a sludge sifter. So I'm a crap cutter and a sludge sifter. Do not say that 10 times real fast, especially if you have a lisp, which I do. All right, so here's what I want to know about you guys. I want to know, so now I've told you what brings me here today. Basically, what brings me here is the subject of recovery from obesity and food obsession, right? Okay, I want to know what brings you guys here. So tell me, why are you here? It could be one word, doesn't have to be like a complete sentence. You're not being graded on grammar here. But I just want to know, what is the one reason that you tune into LBL each day, whether it's live or on demand? So if you're watching on demand, you can still fill in the blanks. I want to know. As I welcome you all in, let's see here. While you're thinking, I'll be greeting. Hi, Mary Kay. Glad you're here. You with your new abstinence list. Go you. Nancy, you're joining me even from vacation. Oh, I missed you yesterday and the day before, but I did see you on demand. But how nice to have you here. Bonnie, hi. How are you? Welcome back. And Cari, another Cari, which we talked about. The more the merrier, right? Let's see here. And Tina, welcome, welcome. Candace. And Dorothy and Regina made it from the road. You're listening to me in the car, are you? All right. Yes. Okay, so you are here, Mary Kay says, to recover from your food addiction. All right. Excellent. I think that's a very good reason. I'm certainly here for the very same reason, because I would like to hold on to that recovery from my food obsession and addiction. All righty. And let's see. Bonnie, it looks like you went out and came back in. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. Because you wouldn't miss it. That's true, Mom. You are a little bit biased. You're my mom, and you wouldn't miss it because, well, I'm your daughter, and I appreciate that very much. You're here for recovery, Bonnie says, and that's a very good reason. And Dorothy says, I try to be here daily to affirm my journey and gain strength with others. Yes! Oh, my God. See, this is why I ask you guys this stuff, because I can't come up with it on my own. I need to know why you guys are here. Wow. That gives me chills. It honestly does. It is so joyful to me that you are here and you're like harnessing the power and strength of others so that you can be stronger. Oh my gosh, Dorothy, I love that. I am so glad you're here. And all right, now hi from the Walmart greeter. All right then, so continue to add why you're here if you would like as the program progresses. Hi Tanya, how are you? Welcome in, come on in. I just asked everyone why they come to LBL, why they join me each day, whether it's live or on demand. So why, I've seen your face before, so if you would like to share, feel free to dive in there and say, why the heck do you come to LBL Lunch Break Live with me? I'm dying to know. I've got some good answers already. All right, how many of you guys joined me for yesterday's program about abstinence and sobriety? And I subtitled that one, Protective or Restrictive. How many of you guys were here? You could just shoot me thumbs up or whatever. Oh, not enough reception. You're going to have to catch me on demand. All right, Regina. All right, be careful on the road there with your 16-year-old. I'll see you when I see you. All right, Cheryl, welcome. Come on in. All right, so Tanya, you're here because you've traded for other addictions. So you've transferred affections, really. That's what I like to call it. I've transferred affections from food to other things. Well, you're in a very good place. I'm glad that you are here. Hola, Blanca. Buenas tardes. Muy bien, porque yo soy muy feliz porque estás aquí conmigo. Gracias por venir. Okay, so how many of you guys joined me? I see a thumbs up going by that you guys, and I see hands raised from Mary Kay. I love it. All right, so yesterday I talked a lot about needs, right? Needs. And I talked about specifically, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs and that little, pyramid, which is still on my wall, so you can still download it. All right. And I'm going to come back to the things that you guys are talking about there. So I talked about how many of us who deal with obesity and food obsession, food addiction, a transference of our affections, okay, we have unmet foundational needs. Those are the things on the very bottom of the pyramid that we feed those unmet needs to get them met. We talked about things like security, the need for relationships, respect, esteem, and my personal favorite at the top of the pyramid, accepting facts. Okay? So I think it was a really good class yesterday. And I always listen back because I like to hear the things that I said. If there's something I need to clarify, if there's a point that I made that I think it needs a little bit massaging, a little bit more work, okay, I always listen back. So I think yesterday's class was a pretty good class, at least for Terry Shaw. Terry, one of my regular viewers, she thought that I rushed through at the end. See? So, yeah, I thought I did good, but then she said, no, you rushed. I'm kidding. I'm like, yeah, I got it all in. But she wants more, okay? She wants more. And I, of course, am here to please. That is my aim, to please. So she asked me to do a part 2. And I'm like, a part 2 about what? So I had to watch it back to see what she was talking about. And, of course, she mentioned to me the whole deprivation thing, which I've done shows on, so there's going to be more to it than that. But, I mean, I was feeling all accomplished, like I'd gotten through without rushing, but clearly I left the best for last. That's pretty much how she said it. And so a lot of you are still holding your breath for me to drop the other shoe. I don't know. Are you holding your breath for me to drop the other shoe? If you're holding your breath, you can't answer me. I understand that. You must be, purple by now. But anyway, I love shoes. I think that's the important part of this message. So since I love shoes, I am willing to take a stab at part 2. Abstinence and sobriety, safety, or slavery. All right? The shoe is now officially being dropped. All right. So yesterday, another person who joins the program regularly, another of my, Jerry, you just joined. I was just going to talk about you. Another of my regular viewers, Jerry, she always makes me think, and she often sees things differently than I do. She thinks about things differently than I do, so she's always challenging my head. Sometimes, I feel like it's going to explode because I'm like, I don't get it. So really good. She pointed out yesterday that she makes very clear distinctions between abstinence and sobriety, where abstinence is an action and sobriety is a state of being. I think, effectively that's what you said. And I've done shows where I've talked about that, exactly, about the meanings of abstinence, sobriety, and recovery, and she's right. You're absolutely right, Jerry. They are different, okay? But in my mind yesterday, I lumped them together. I did that because, if there's a distinction in someone's mind and they're absolutely viewing them as separate things, then for me to lump them together may not be fair. But I did because my recovery depends upon my sober abstinence. It's like I can't do one without the other in my mind. That's me, all right? Because I work hard to live life on life's terms without using food to avoid or control situations. And I have a list of foods that I avoid entirely. So all of that together makes up what I call my recovery, which is not being a dry drunk, which I've talked about before, which is where you don't use, right? You don't participate in your substance or your activity, right, that you're addicted to, that you obsess over, that you're compulsive or impulsive about, okay? The stuff that you turned to instead of dealing with life, okay? I don't, just because I'm not using or doing that thing anymore, okay, it doesn't mean that I'm automatically well. I still have to address the stuff. I still have to face life on life's terms. I have to face the things and not avoid all the things that I was trying to avoid by getting numbed out. Okay, so that's why, to me, it's like a trifecta. Like they all have to go together for me in my world. I'm not going to be an angry, dry drunk who's pissed off at the world because I can't use anymore. I'm going to deal with whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether, grief, depression, disappointment, frustration, lack of control, feeling worthless. I'm going to deal with all of that stuff head on, face on. I'm going to accept facts, top of Maslow's pyramid, okay, and not feed them. That means that I am living life in a sober way, abstinent from the foods and behaviors to which I was addicted, and specifically the things I used in place of dealing with life on life's terms, so that I can fully live my recovery. So you are not incorrect in any way, shape, or form. The point is, that is why I did lump it together yesterday, for better or worse. But to be clear, they are different. And the truth is, you can be abstinent but not sober. I know, that's going to mess your head up, but it's true. But that's a different show. We're not going to talk about that today. All right, so the point of putting them together yesterday was the idea that many people fear the concept of being sober through abstinence, okay? The idea of achieving sobriety through abstinence, because they believe it means they will be, and I wrote these in big capital letters, limited, restricted, not free, okay? Those are the conclusions that many people draw from the idea of living sober, abstinent recovery, okay? So when we talk about the very real need to be safe, well, then if you perceive those things to be true, you are not probably going to want to choose recovery, are you? Because you're saying that flies in the face of what I need in order to feel safe. I cannot be limited, restricted, or unfree, okay? Enslaved, in other words. That flies in the face of my security. Okay, but perception really, really is the key. And I mentioned that yesterday, talking about perception, because I believe that misperception is what keeps us sick. It's what keeps us enslaved. I misperceived that a life without, big letters, without certain foods would be a life without freedom. That was my misperception. That was the conclusion. That's where I was coming from. That's why I feared and felt unsafe about the concept of sober, abstinent recovery. I would feel enslaved by the things I couldn't eat, right? Listen to me when I say that. I would be enslaved by the foods I couldn't eat, right? So in other words, since I didn't want to be enslaved, I would say that I could eat them. I didn't want to say I couldn't eat them because I didn't want to be enslaved, okay? But this perception came from, and I'm going to give you a little history here, several times, circumstances or situations in my life, okay? Now, the first of which was this. I grew up in a house with a diabetic brother, type 1 diabetic, okay? So for as long as I have any memory of life, I was living in a house that revolved around his very real needs to survive. Our entire world revolved around his needs. That's my perception. It's not that my needs were not met. However, in my little 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old mind, I felt that my needs did not have priority and that his needs superseded my needs. Okay, that was the perception I had. My mom did a remarkable job. First of all, I don't know if you understand, maybe you do, what it's like, but certainly this is like 55 years ago, what it's like living in a time where diabetes could have killed you at any instant and there wasn't anything you could do about it to stop it. My mom lived in constant fear, my mom and dad. So I lived in a house that was controlled fear all the time, that my brother could just die, all right? And so our world necessarily revolved around him. He was priority, okay? But, and again, it is not that I was not loved. It is not that my needs were not taken care of. It is that my misperception, I was the baby. I wanted to be important. I wanted it to be all about me. And it just wasn't. Even when it wasn't, okay? So he couldn't eat certain things, therefore I couldn't eat certain things, right? But this is all because of him. I could eat them if it weren't for him. That's my conclusion. So I was limited, I was restricted, and I was deprived. That was my conclusion, right? If I can't eat them because he can't eat them, then I am being deprived, and I am limited, and I am restricted because of him, and that is not fair, and that is what happens when you can't eat certain foods. That was my inaccurate perception, because the reality was something my mom desperately tried to convey to me, get through my thick head was that those things were not healthy for us, anyone. Okay, this isn't the advent, like this is in the early days of fast food, McDonald's, which was called junk food for a reason. And it was very limited. We certainly never drank soda. We drank milk. We didn't get French fries. Occasionally my dad would share his with me. And on a really super special day, he would split his apple pie with me. And I would feel like over the moon, joyful, happy. All right. Joyful about food. Isn't that odd? All right. Here's the thing. I want you to think about this for just a second. Watching my brother get a candy bar when he was having a reaction made me want to be diabetic so I could have a candy bar too. How warped is that? But that's the way I thought. I'm like, why does he get a candy bar? Because he's having a reaction. Well, I want to have a reaction too because I want to have a candy bar too. Okay? I'm being deprived. Okay? That was my warped misperception conclusion. Now, the next event in my life was treating fibromyalgia. Okay, I've known about this for about 20 years. Let's just say about 20 years. Now, if you are unfamiliar with fibromyalgia, it is a disorder. It's not a disease. It is a combination of a lot of symptoms, multiple symptoms. And the crazy thing is not everyone shares or experiences the disorder in the same way. Some people will have this, but not that. Some people will have this, but not the other. Okay? And we experience it in differing ways. One of the chief complaints, I guess, that you could say that we with fibromyalgia have is that everything hurts far worse than it should. Now, for me, when I was growing up, I had a high threshold of pain. Things did not really hurt me that much. And all of a sudden, after some pretty messy illnesses and some medical trauma, you could say, all of a sudden things started hurting more. I thought it was emotional. I thought it was purely me. Like all of a sudden I turned into a wimp or a wuss. But all of a sudden things that didn't used to hurt really, really bad, even to touching me. It was really, really bad. I thought it was crazy. I really, really did. And this is kind of in the early days of diagnosis. All right. So basically what I have learned, this is how I would distill it. And again, I'm not a doctor, okay? But this is how I distill it now. This is my understanding of my own disorder and how it was that it was so very, very bad. It's like a pie with 3 pieces. There's sleep disorder, eating disorder, and activity disorder. Pretty much life, okay? Your whole life is disordered, okay? So you don't sleep well. That's number 1. So you don't get that deep regenerative sleep. So your body aches when you wake up. I used to say it felt like getting run over by a Mack truck. I'd been hit by a truck or a bus, and then he backed up over me to finish the job. Your body aches when you wake up. And because you hurt so much, you don't exercise, which of course would help you. It would help the pain, but you hurt too much, and you're exhausted. You don't have the energy to exercise. And since you're tired, and we know that exercise helps us to burn calories and generates energy, well, if we don't have enough energy to burn healthy food, we eat crap. So I fed myself the cheapest simplex carbs I could find because they would burn really, really fast. I subsisted on Diet Pepsi to get that caffeine going. Caffeine, and sugar. Caffeine, sugar, snack foods, white flour, processed carbs, drink in small little bursts all day long because I was trying to ride this roller coaster of blood sugar that was constantly crashing and burning, all right? So it was easy energy, I call it, just to get me through the day. And it's a vicious cycle. And anyone who has it will tell you this. And unfortunately, the way in which that it often is addressed, is we throw meds at each of the conditions to try and manage them, all right? So, for example, here's something to help you sleep, right? But, oh, by the way, it might make you hungry. Yeah, okay, there's that. So here's something that's going to stop you from being hungry. Okay, but you might get tired. So, right? You're like, oh my gosh, so I'm just totally chasing this thing around and around and around. And now I'm craving chocolate and I'm exhausted, but I'm sleeping better, but I have no energy. It's a nightmare. I understand. Okay. So I found that when I didn't eat, just so you know, yeast and sugar and caffeine, I went to the chiropractor, got massage therapy, and took endocrine supplements, I felt better. Okay, I did. That's a lot of work. And I still hurt more than the average person. Okay. But it was more manageable. And unfortunately, it was really expensive. It was costing me a fortune. It took a great deal of time and energy to treat it. and I felt deprived. It was too hard. Okay, why couldn't I eat what everybody else ate? I don't understand. I want to have what they have. They're having pizza and I can't have it because it's yeast. That's not fair. So I felt deprived, okay? And so after a couple of years, I lost a little bit of weight during this time. I quit and I went back to doing what I was always doing because I figured if I was going to be even moderately miserable, I wanted to be able to eat whatever I wanted to eat. I'll just be miserable and eat what I want to eat. See, here's the thing. I felt enslaved by this rigorous treatment. It's like I was following and doing all this stuff, and it was exhausting and exhausting. So I was looking at being enslaved by the routine, the treatment, rather than feeling freed from the enslavement of my disorder. Again, perception. My perception was I was enslaved to the treatment rather than saying, but I am freed of the entrapment of the disorder. Okay, do you see? But it was a perception thing. So, and I think it's because I was never completely free. Why not? Because I wasn't active. I did not exercise. And I really believe that would have helped. Okay? If I had done that, I really believed I would have experienced the fullness of more freedom from fibromyalgia. Anyway, that was, it's a very key part of treating fibromyalgia is exercise. Okay, so that was my experience with abstinence. Okay, it was limiting, depriving, restrictive, horrible, unfair, insert, adjective. Okay, so, but yesterday's show was meant to explain that when we get our healthy needs met in unhealthy ways, the net result is that we feel unhealthy, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Okay? We feel bad about ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We get depressed. We feel worthless, right? Because we're getting healthy needs met in unhealthy ways. Whether it's because we don't know how to meet them in other ways, whether it's because we don't feel we deserve to get them met in healthy ways, whether we don't believe that we can get them met in healthy ways, whatever it is, right? That's where we are. That's where we live. Okay, so here's the great thing. When we find healthy ways to get those healthy needs met, we are stronger. And we often see things from a different perspective. I do anyway, okay? How often do we stop and question our needs and say, I shouldn't feel this way. I should just get over it and get on. This shouldn't be a big deal. And we wave our hand dismissively at very real needs, deciding that they shouldn't be needs. Well, I think that just kicks the ball down the road, and we find very unhealthy ways to meet needs that we don't believe we should have. Okay? All right. Here's what I want you guys to know. Now, in recovery, okay, sober, abstinent recovery for me, now that I am not enslaved by my willpower, listen to that, I have more power. When I relied upon that sheer will to stop eating something once I started it, I actually had less power. Remember we talked about resistance and holding on. You have no power because you're doing this, okay? So I actually had less power then. But now that I'm not enslaved by that, I have more power. Now that I'm not enslaved by my obesity, I recognize my self-worth. Now that I am not enslaved by insecurity, I am more secure. Now that I am not enslaved by the need to control people, I am in control of myself. And now that I am not enslaved by a crippling lack of confidence, I trust myself. Do any of those sound like met needs that we have from yesterday's hierarchy of needs on the pyramid? Right? Confidence, security, yeah, safety, right? So when you feel powerless, worthless, out of control, fearful, you're a slave. Do you agree? That's what makes a slave, right? When you have power and self-worth and control and confidence and trust, you have safety, which is at the right there at the bottom. It's the second level up on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's a biggie. And when it is that you have power, self-worth, control, confidence, and trust, you have safety. You are getting your need met in healthy ways because you are no longer enslaved by this willpower, this need to control others, this lack of confidence, and this insecurity, right? Do you hear what I'm saying? That's how it works, right? Sometimes we think, well, I have to just address it head on. These are all byproducts of doing healthy things. We get needs met in healthy ways, sometimes as byproduct of doing healthy things, not even with the purpose of meeting the healthy need. It's crazy, I tell you, absolutely crazy. Anyway, I do want to mention this, by the way, surrender, okay? That's a part of this, okay? I talk about surrender a lot. You know, I've talked about it various times. I talked about it on my wall today because I loved it because I heard someone talking about it. And then, of course, someone did bring up Cheap Trick, a girl after my own heart, absolutely. But the idea of this quote, and this is a part that makes people feel like they can't surrender because they say, I can't stop fighting. I'm a fighter. And if I give up, what good am I? That's their conclusion. Well, this guy that I heard on the radio this morning, he's the CEO of like a really big company. He was talking about the fact that he came from a family, a military family, where you never stop fighting. You fight. You fight it out. You fight it through. You never stop fighting, right? And so to him, surrender meant you stop fighting, you give up. And he said one day he had this vision and he began to understand and see it differently. He saw this mighty warrior, the mightiest warrior on the planet, laying down his sword, because he realized he had been fighting for the wrong side. That warrior didn't stop fighting. He realized he had been fighting the wrong battle for the wrong side, okay? So that's how surrender looks. You don't stop fighting. You don't give up. I liken it to giving in and giving over, saying, all right, I'm going to put my pride out of the way and listen, get out of my own way, get over myself, okay? So that's where the surrender piece fits. I've also talked about surrender and will continue to do so on future episodes if you guys would like. Here's how I'm going to conclude this. Sobriety through abstinence and recovery give me safety. They give me this safety that I never believed I could have, ever. And yet I always craved, desired, and yearned for it, okay? The only thing I'm deprived of is enslavement and fear. And you know, I think I can do without that. So that is my part 2 to yesterday's story. And I am hopeful, as I close in on the 30-minute mark, that you found some benefit and some freeing thoughts in my words so that you can begin to see abstinence sobriety not with fear, but with the courage that says, I am tired of being enslaved by my obesity, enslaved by my food obsession, my compulsion, my addiction. I am tired of being enslaved by this avoidance of life where I plug in whatever I can find so that I can be numbed or blinded to the realities that I'm afraid to face. Living in fear is enslavement. Facing your fear and knowing that you have the courage to stand up to and face that thing is freeing. That is safety. That is security. That is protection, if you ask me. All right, you guys, I'm going to sign off. I know that you guys are talking quite a bit, but I don't want to run long. I'm really grateful as ever that you're here. I do hope that you found one more reason to join LBL with today's show. Maybe you learned one thing. Tell you what, here's your challenge. I want you guys on my wall, post one thing that you're taking away from today's show that you will apply to your own life. Because there's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of information. Give me one thing that you're going to take away so that you can work on your sober, abstinent recovery in your own life. All right? I want to hear it. You can put it here. You can put it on my wall. Whatever. Wherever you want to put it. All right, you guys? So I'm going to sign off as ever. And I'm going to remind you all to have courage, seek peace, embrace joy, and above all, live the safety, security, and freedom of recovery. Remember, you can't stop feeding what's eating you if you don't know what's eating you. I will see you guys tomorrow. Please remember to share the show. And, oh, if you like the work we're doing here, Support me and become a patron of the show, CariDelaCruz.com/Patreon, Patreon. Take care. Bye.